Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I am Danielle, aka Stitcherista here on YouTube, and today is another diamond paint with me while I continue working on Treasure Studios art Cherry Blossom by Lizzie Falcon. It's almost like when you're really, really hungry and you're like, I could eat a whole plate of spaghetti, and you take a couple bites and you're like, I'm already full. I do not think I'm going to finish this week. I am going to diamond paint more today after this video. I don't know though. I mean, I'm working on Wednesday. I do have Thursday and Friday, so yeah, I mean, it's possible. It's possible. But I'm also trying not to put too much pressure on myself. If I get it done, I get it done. So Bill's sister is still stable, so thank you for all of the prayers and thoughts and well wishes and everything. She is still doing pretty much the same. They were able to get her off of a medication, I think, which is a good thing, So we just wait for updates. Yesterday, I actually did work on my stitching. I'm enjoying stitching downstairs again in bed. Remember, I wasn't. I was stitching up here in my office. And it's just been nice to be able to stitch down there and the Shannon Christine, the Halloween Club, I hope she continues to do that every year. I absolutely love her aesthetic for her patterns. And I have those, and then I have like her Christmas Club from last year. I didn't really like her Christmas Club for this year, so I didn't purchase it. But the ones from last year, I really, really like. So, and it's just so nice to have something small that I can hold in my hand, and I'm enjoying it very, very much. So I did do some stitching last night while I started watching I Know What You Did Last Summer, the series on Amazon. That's, if you're a Prime member, you can watch it for free. It's based on, the movies and everything. It is different, and so I think I'm only on episode 2. I'll keep watching. Like, I want to see what's going to happen. So yeah, watching that. We had the leftover meatloaf for dinner last night. Tonight, his daughter and her boyfriend are coming over for dinner. And I was up early this morning. Well, I was up at 7. And I had another doctor appointment today, my oncologist. And it's so funny because, I don't really have any issues. So he was like, wow, this is pretty boring. And I was like, okay. And he's like, well, and now I only have to see him once a year unless I have an issue. So he's like, well, have a good holiday. And he's like, let me go see if my next appointment, presents a challenge. And I said, it's got to be nice though, having a break once in a while, right? Like not having all of your patients have all of these immense problems, He was like, oh yeah. And I was just like, okay, I was in there literally. My appointment was at 9. I was back in my car at 9:10. Yeah. And I didn't go to Starbucks. I usually do when I go to Mercy because it's literally right there in the parking lot. The line was wrapped around the building and I was like, F that. So I just came home and had my own coffee here. And I talked to my dad for a while. And he's very excited we're coming over this year for Thanksgiving because we didn't go last year because of everything going on. Yeah, so I did start a new book. I started the book last night. It is called When I Was You by Amber Garza. So here is the premise. Why did that happen? Why is it not letting me? Oh, they changed the app. The app updated. Okay. So it says the show You, based on Caroline Kepney's books. You meets Fatal Attraction in this up all night story of suspicion, obsession, and motherhood. It all begins on an ordinary fall morning when Kelly Medina gets a call from her son's pediatrician to confirm her upcoming well baby appointment. It's a cruel mistake. Her son left for college a year ago, and Kelly has never felt so alone. The receptionist quickly apologizes. There's another mother in town named Kelly Medina, and she must have gotten their number switched. For days, Kelly can't stop thinking about the woman who shares her name, lives in her same town, has a son she can still hold, and her whole life ahead of her. She can't help looking for her at the grocery store, at the gym, on social media. When Kelly just happens to bump into the single mother outside that pediatrician's office, it's simple curiosity getting the better of her. Their unlikely friendship brings Kelly a renewed sense of purpose, taking care of this young woman and her adorable baby boy, but that friendship quickly turns to obsession, and when one Kelly disappears, well, the other one may know why. I'm only 16, I'm on page 55 of 322. So the Kelly that has the son that went to college, she's married to a guy who works 2 hours away. So he stays in at his job. He has like a place there. He stays there all week and comes home on the weekends. And she has a best friend who they go to yoga and work out and do all that kind of stuff with. But you get the underlying sense that she had like a psychotic break or something happened because she sees the therapist, and everyone's concerned that this other Kelly doesn't exist. And I'm like, does she not exist? Like, I'm questioning it, right? I haven't even gotten to the point where their relationship really takes off. They've only met. So I will let you know. But it's enough to keep my interest. And it was $6.99 on Kindle to buy. So, yeah. Okay. So today's story is called Mother's Little Helpers. Paul Whitty, I'm going to say Whitty because it's Witte. Might be Wit, but we're going to say Whitty. Paul Whitty was hardly a candidate for Father or Husband of the Year. The 43-year-old volunteer fireman from Beverly Shores, Indiana, was a wannabe outdoorsman, a keen hunter, a hard taskmaster. He did not go easy on his sons, Eric, aged 15, and John, who was 13. Falling below their father's high standards and was always earned them a beating. Lovely. And Paul was harsh on his wife, too. Hilma Marie Whitty, known to friends and family as Marie, was 10 years Paul's junior. She had been married to him for a decade and a half and had suffered countless beatings during that time. She hated him. By the summer of 1981, Marie was looking for a way out of the marriage. It makes, when I read stuff like this, it makes me wonder, were there signs before they were married that he was abusive? I know sometimes there isn't. Like, you have no idea and people just completely change, afterwards. But walking away empty-handed was not something that Marie was prepared to countenance, not after the hurt she had endured. A divorce and the pittance it was likely to bring her was not an option. A housewife for her entire adult life, with few saleable skills, she knew that she would not be able to support her sons without Paul. If Paul were to die, though, the situation would be significantly tilted in her favor. Yes, indeedy, I'm guessing he had a life insurance policy. And so Hilma Marie Whitty began to plot the murder of her husband. At first, she thought she might get rid of him by mixing rat poison into his food. But Paul wolfed it all down without complaint and showed no ill effects. Well, you probably didn't put enough in there. Right? Then Marie tried a different method, feeding him Valium, which she believed he was allergic to. The result was pretty much the same. Despite swallowing the crushed up pills, Paul remained in fine health. Clearly, a different method was called for. Paul kept several guns around the house. It was time to put one of them to use. Now, you gotta be smart though, right? Like, gunshot residue. You know what I mean? Like, we've heard just so many of these stories where it just goes awry. But Marie was no fool. She knew that shooting her husband would land her in trouble, maybe even on trial for murder. Perhaps she could fool a jury with a self-defense story, perhaps not. It was not a risk she was willing to take, and it wasn't one that she needed to take either. Not when she had two potential assassins living under her roof. Eric and John both hated their father. All it would take was a little persuasion, And if they were caught while they were juveniles, they would serve hardly any jail time at all. Okay, I had to pause the recording for a second because our doorbell rang. And that was our neighbor that brings us bread, and he brought us the mother load this week. He brought us like 6 loaves of bread and some English muffins and some hot dog rolls. He was like, I hope this isn't too much. No. I figure I'll give a pack of the hot dog rolls, though, and 1 loaf of the bread to my stepdaughter for her to take home to her mom because we can only eat so much bread. But I kept, 2 of them were 647 bread that we absolutely use and love. And then the English muffins, absolutely, I will eat those. And yeah. But usually I hear him on the ring thing, and I even, get down there before he rings the doorbell, and he's like, oh, you must have been doing something, or I caught you at a bad time or whatever. Okay. So, Marie's trying to get her kids to do the dirty work, right? Because they're juveniles, so they would hardly serve any jail time at all. This is awful, using your kids, right? So Eric, being the older one, was Marie's obvious choice. She got to work on the boy immediately, telling him that his father was planning to divorce her and throw them all out on the street. Eric was terrified by the prospect of being homeless, but not so terrified that he was prepared to consider Marie's solution to the problem. He refused to have anything to do with the murder plot, and no amount of convincing or trying to convince him would get him to change his mind. So at this point, Marie's plan to free herself from her abusive husband appeared to be dead in the water. But Marie Whitty was not a woman to be easily dissuaded from her course. She packed a bag and moved out, leaving her sons to the tender mercies of their abusive father. Just a couple of days of this, and the boys were calling her, begging her to return. And Marie promised she would on one condition: Eric would have to do her bidding. Wow! Mother of the year over here. Are you kidding me? So on September 1st, 1981, a 911 call brought police and paramedics racing to the Whitty residence. They arrived to find Paul Whitty dead on the couch, a .38 caliber bullet embedded in his skull. Eric was crying, clearly traumatized. He kept saying over and over again it was an accident. According to Eric, he had found his father's revolver and was carrying it through the lounge when he tripped on the rug and the gun discharged. His father, who was asleep on the couch, was struck by the stray bullet. Looking around the cluttered room, investigators could see how such a thing might easily happen, and the shooting was ultimately ruled an accident. Marie Whitty and her son Eric had gotten away with murder. Probably not, because we wouldn't have a story, right? But if Marie thought that Paul's death would lessen her burden, she was sorely mistaken. Her husband had been deep in debt, and the money she received from his estate was a pittance. She and her sons were staring homelessness square in the face. Fortunately for Marie, someone was about to come to their rescue. So, at least though, even though I don't agree with Marie's tactics, there has to be some peace for them, though, now that Paul is dead and there's no abuse going on, right? Elaine Whitty was Paul's 74-year-old mother, a lively and independent senior who lived in Trail Creek, Indiana. A generous soul, Elaine invited the family to move in with her, an offer that Marie gratefully accepted. Not that Marie repaid her mother-in-law's generosity in kind. She barely had her feet through the door when she started stealing from Elaine, siphoning money out of her bank accounts. What the actual fuck is wrong with this person? How do you conduct yourself on a daily basis like this? So this was hardly a deception that could succeed. Elaine soon noticed the anomalies on her bank statement and quizzed Marie about them. How did she get access to her bank accounts, by the way? So, dissatisfied with the answer she got, she asked Marie to leave her house, and in doing so, Elaine Whitty unknowingly signed her own death warrant. Jesus fucking Christ. Okay. Marie, of course, was no longer a novice when it came to murder. She had a method that worked and she used it again, this time homing in on her 14-year-old son, John, known as Butch. John was fond of his grandmother and initially he refused, but Marie was persistent. She told him that Elaine was about to report her to the police and that she would most likely end up in jail. What would happen to him and his brother then? So Butch Whitty spent most of the night of January 8th, 1984 in the basement of the house, drinking vodka and smoking marijuana to dull his senses. In the early morning hours, he snuck into his grandmother's room carrying in his hand a crossbow. Jesus! What? My God. The weapon was leveled at the sleeping woman, and then Butch pulled the trigger and fired the metal bolt into Elaine Whitty's chest. A hard shot would at least have given the elderly woman a quick death, but Butch missed the vital organs, and instead the bolt passed right through Elaine and pinned her to the bed. She was left to die a slow and agonizing death. Oh, wow. That reminds me of a movie. Have you guys seen the movie or read the book, We Need to Talk About Kevin? I'm not going to say anything, but there is arrows and archery involved in there at one point, and it makes, oh my God. Yeah. Okay, so in the murder of her husband, Marie had relied on an accidental death story. Clearly that would not work here. Clearly, yeah. She was going to have to make Elaine disappear, and so Marie got to work roping in the help of her sons and even her mother, Margaret O'Donnell. I'm sorry, I don't know that I would be able to help my mother or my whatever hide a fucking body in this instance. So together, the quartet performed the grisly task of dismembering the corpse. No, ma'am. Using a chainsaw, knives, chisels, the garbage disposal, a microwave, even a kitchen blender. Get out of here right now. Get out of here. Get out of here. The remains were packed into garbage bags and refrigerated. Over the next few months, these body parts would be dispensed far and wide, some of them even carried as far as California. I mean, obviously, they found them all because they're telling the story. So, with Elaine out of the way, Marie and her sons continued living in her house while Marie systematically emptied the dead woman's bank account and cashed her Social Security checks. She's going to be brought up on fraud, if anything. But Elaine lived in a close-knit retirement community and her friends started asking questions about her. This spooked Marie and she eventually decided to leave. Packing up their things in the middle of the night, she and her sons fled to California. They were arrested there on November 14th, 1984. The charge was Social Security fraud. What did I just say? Soon it would be elevated to something far more serious than that, of course. It was Butch Whitty who first cracked under questioning. The 14-year-old. He was only 14, so yeah, you could definitely probably crack him. The 14-year-old was clearly carrying something on his conscience, and as detectives continued to probe, he broke down and admitted that he had murdered his grandmother. He had done it, he said, at his mother's behest. And Butch wasn't stopping there either. He was a singing canary by this point. He went on to tell investigators that his father's death had not been an accident. His brother Eric had deliberately pumped a bullet into his forehead while he slept. This murder, too, had been carried out on his mother's orders. Offered a deal in exchange for his testimony, Eric Whitty would later admit that this was true. Okay. So, given what we know about Hilma Marie Whitty, it should be no surprise to anyone that she attempted to secure her freedom by throwing her own children under the bus. According to Marie, Eric had killed his father because he hated him, and Butch had murdered Elaine because he was obsessed with Dungeons and Dragons. The only thing she was guilty of was covering up the crimes to protect her children. Sus. Nah. Unfortunately for Marie, this was not a narrative that would fly with the jury at her trial. Found guilty of murder, she was sentenced to a minimum of 90 years behind bars. Her ass gonna die in jail. After pleading guilty to reduced charges of manslaughter, Eric and John were each given 20 years. They both walked free in 1996. Marie Whitty is currently held at the Indiana Women's Prison in Indianapolis, where she has proved to be a model inmate. In 2000, she filed a request for a reconsideration of her sentence, given what she called her rehabilitation behind bars. and there was at least some merit to her claim. Marie had completed a Bachelor of Arts degree, and she served as a counselor to several of her fellow inmates. She was not, she claimed, the same woman who had commissioned 2 murders. I mean, that's possible. I believe that people can be really rehabilitated. I mean, and whenever I think about stuff like this, I think of the movie Shawshank Redemption, and specifically Morgan Freeman's character. You know, he was 19 when he committed what he committed. He murdered somebody, I think, in a robbery. And I mean, when you see him in the movie, he's been in prison for like 40 or 50 years. So is he rehabilitated? Is he a different person? Absolutely. You are not the same person at 19 that you are at 60. Yeah. So the law, however, can have a long memory. No one had forgotten the dreadful crimes Marie had committed, not at least the murder of a defenseless old woman who had shown her nothing but kindness. No one had forgotten how she had manipulated her sons and ruined their lives. Marie's petition for a new sentence was denied, and she must serve out her time and will most likely die wearing an orange prison jumpsuit. Now, what I don't quite understand is, okay, Paul's mother takes them all in. Why at that point wouldn't Marie have thought to herself, this is my chance to start over. I'm going to find a job. I'm going to get back on my feet. I'm going to live my life. I mean, why? Why would you not take that chance, right? Because I'm sure that if they wouldn't have killed the grandmother, that the murder of the father would never have come out. Like, that would have remained ruled an accident. You know what I mean? Like, you want to just, no. Why? Why would you, no. Okay. So had you ever heard of that story? I surely had not. So as always, if you have any questions, well, second of all, I hope you guys all have a fantastic Tuesday. As always, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments section below, and I will answer them to the best of my ability. Thank you so much for watching and subscribing, and I will see you in my next video. Bye, guys.